All right, welcome back to you. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're gonna talk about Terence Crawford, Arum Spence Jr., and what Bob Arum said. Some things that I think make some sense, and some things that I think are very, very self-serving and ridiculous. But let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Thank you to everybody that continues to support the channel. If you don't mind, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share button, all that. It really does help grow the channel. If you feel like watching the video all the way to the end and hitting the like button in, I'd appreciate that as well. Bob Arum says, in short, that Al Heyman and the PBC would be stupid to sign Terence Crawford to a contract, and more so that the fights, pay-per-view fights that take place on cable and all that are all going to flop or will be flopping, and that means the Arum Spence and Terence Crawford fight, because that particular way of doing business is dead and gone, and it is going to be moving towards apps and streaming services and the like, right? So Bob Arum says that, and I got to tell you, man, you know, there are some things that, there's some points that he made that make sense. Like, you know, eventually, you know, a lot of the things that we currently do through cable, right, is going to be on apps, because that's the way, you know, people are cutting the cord. You know, over time, you know, that more than likely is going to be the case, where a lot of pay-per-views are bought on your phone or bought, you know, on your, bought on an app that you stream to your TV, all of that good stuff. However, you know, when you're talking about things related to Arum Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, I do not believe we are there yet. There is still a very large section of the boxing world that relies upon basic cables and is used to cable and is used to being able to go to a particular channel, see a little button there that says buy, be able to click it, buy it, and do it that way, right? So in one sense, Bob Arum is telling the truth in that regard, but you know, there are things that are called the bleeding edge, and then there's the bleeding edge. And we have already been through a lot of this with DAZN saying that their streaming app was going to be the wave of the future, and look what's happening with them. You know, in my personal opinion, you know, for a while, especially like with people my age and people older that, you know, who are older than me, and those are a lot of the people that will be buying these fights, they're going to be doing it the traditional way. But for him to say, and this is the thing that gets me about Terence Crawford and Arum Spence Jr., for him to say, or for Terence Crawford specifically, that the PBC would be stupid to sign Terence Crawford, man, that is an absolute positive low blow, man. Because at the same time that he is saying that they would be stupid to sign him, he's saying that he wants Terence Crawford to be made, you know, to make himself available for fights that would be held on ESPN Plus, and where we already know that there is a track record of Terence Crawford and the pay-per-views not doing well, right? So if it was a scenario where, you know, ESPN Plus and the ESPN pay-per-views were actually doing better than the pay-per-views that are being promoted by the PBC, I would say okay. But the fact of the matter is that they're not. All the promotion that Bob Arum has been doing for Top Rank and the pay-per-views that he's done with Terence Crawford to date have failed, and that's one of the reasons why he's saying he's losing all of this money. And in one breath, you know, on one side of the neck, Bob Arum is saying, you know, how he wants to do fight by fight, you know, negotiate fights on a fight by fight basis with Terence Crawford. But on the other side, he's still signing other fighters to long-term deals, long-term deals. Still signing guys to long-term deals. So, you know, which is it? Is it something special about Terence Crawford that says you need to be on a fight-by-fight basis, or in other guys where it makes more sense for you to be, you know, on a long-term contract, right? But at the same time, you're saying you're losing a ton of money on Terence Crawford. I mean, Bob Arum just, honestly, man, the man says whatever, you know, talks out of whatever side of the neck he needs to talk out of in order to get that business deal. done. Now, what I personally think as far as it relates to Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. is that it is absolutely ridiculous for them to think that that fight between the two of those guys are going to lose money no matter where they put that fight. They could have that fight on ESPN Plus, the app. That fight is going to make a lot of money. They could put that fight on Showtime. That's going to make a lot of money. They could put it on Fox. And it's going to make a lot of money there, because there's going to be a critical mass of boxing fans that are interested in that fight, because they both have together. They bring a large fan base of people together to watch the fight. You know, if you watch how some like the really super big fights are made, like the fight between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Canelo Alvarez, or Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, you know, that typically brings two different fan bases together. But in this particular fight for Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, they appeal to the same fan base, but that fan base has enough fans in it so where those guys can judge and successfully predict that they're going to make a good amount of money. But I think that the problem with Terence Crawford has not been with whether or not he's on an app or whether or not he's on a traditional cable network for the pay-per-views. I think all of that stuff rests with Bob Arum, and the fact that Bob Arum and Top Rank did not put the work in, early in Terence Crawford's career to build him up as a fighter and to get him the type of appeal that would be an automatic draw for fans. If you look at what Gervonta Tank Davis is, what's going on with Gervonta Tank Davis and Mayweather Promotions, they started building him up very, very early in his career, got him in situations where he was fighting on the undercard of Floyd Mayweather Jr., where he was being a co-main event for the Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight, which was one of the biggest paying pay-per-views ever. Gervonta Tank Davis was the second fighter, with the penultimate, I think that's a penultimate, the second to last fight on that card. Floyd Mayweather Jr. built him up from very early in his career, getting him a title win against Pedraza, and always talks and promoted Gervonta Davis like he was the next best thing. Same thing goes for Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. was on, it was either CBS or NBC very early in his career against Leonard Bundu, and was exposed to 5-6 million people very early in his career. And that's just not what Bob Arum has done with Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, for the entire time that he's been with Top Rank, has been second fiddle. And that wears on, how attractive he is to masses of fans. When you're fighting on a network that even during your own telecast for fights with you is talking about other guys being better than you, saying that, that Vasily Lomachenko is above him on, as far as a pound for pound fighter is, how, Terence Crawford is on the level of a Sugar Ray Leonard, but Lomachenko is somebody, that is on a level, of like a young Ali, the greatest you ever seen. Those are value propositions that you gave to your audience over time that pretty much devalued Terence Crawford, or if not devalued, certainly did not increase his value in the eyes of boxing fans. So, the idea that because Errol Spence Jr. or Terence Crawford or any other fight, just because it's on a cable network like Showtime or like Fox, it would necessarily fail, or that it would be dumb for Al Heyman to invest and sign Terence Crawford. I mean, that's just ridiculous. First of all, he's got plenty of fights that he can make with Terence Crawford, and he's not going to beat around the bush with him. He's going to get him in there with guys that already have big names on networks that will sell him, right? If he's on a Fox pay-per-view, Terence Crawford is more than likely going to be promoted in NFL football games, even though there's not an NFL football team in the cities that he's from. But still, on the Sundays leading up to the fight, if the fight's during the NFL season, they're going to talk about that fight. Showtime has a regular, consistent amount of boxing fans that go watch that network. They'll talk about him and promote him on a regular basis. I don't think that Terence Crawford and his lack of pay-per-view sales or what have you have really anything to do with Terence Crawford, the fighter, and has a lot more to do with Top Rank. So anyway, man, I just thought that was a really wild thing for him to say. But you let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.